The distress call. The mining colony on Kepler-7 had been peaceful for 40 standard years. Administrator Kellen watched the twin suns set over the Crystal Mountains, their light painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. His species, the Zalani, had built this colony to harvest the rare minerals buried deep beneath the surface. They were a peaceful race, their bodies tall and slender with skin that shimmered like pearl. They had never known war, never needed weapons, never imagined that something could come from the void with nothing but hunger in its heart. The first sign of trouble came when the long-range sensors picked up movement at the edge of the system. Kellen studied the readings with his 4 eyes, each one focusing on different data streams. The signature didn't match any known vessel in the Coalition database. It wasn't one ship either, it was thousands. Chief Scientist Vera entered the command center, her tentacle-like appendages writhing with anxiety. The Nathari were an aquatic species who had joined the mining operation for their expertise in deep drilling. She had been Kellen's friend for 20 years and he had never seen her this frightened. Administrator, the objects are accelerating toward us. They're not responding to any communication attempts. Kellen activated the colony's emergency protocols. 800 souls lived on Kepler-7, representing 12 different species. They were miners, scientists, families who had come here seeking opportunity. None of them were soldiers. The Coalition had been at peace for 2 centuries. War was something they studied in history files, not something they prepared for. The swarm arrived 3 hours later. They called themselves the Devourers, though Kellen would only learn this name much later. Each ship was a living organism, a creature bred in the darkness between galaxies. They looked like massive insects made of metal and flesh, their hulls pulsing with biomechanical life. They didn't want to negotiate. They didn't want the minerals. They wanted the colony itself, the life force of every being on the planet. Kellen sent out the distress signal immediately. The message went out on all Coalition frequencies, reaching every allied world within 500 light-years. This is Kepler-7 mining colony. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Immediate assistance required. 800 lives at stake. The response came from the Coalition Security Council on the capital world of Synthesis Prime. Council leader Theron, a member of the ancient Quillos race, appeared on the communication screen. His crystalline form reflected light in patterns that expressed deep concern. Administrator Kellen, our nearest patrol fleet is 72 hours away. Can you hold that long? Kellen looked at the screen showing the Devourers landing on the planet's surface. Their creatures were already spreading across the landscape like a plague, consuming everything organic in their path. The colony's shields would hold for maybe 12 hours. 20 if they diverted all power from life support. Negative, Council Leader. We have less than a day. The Council chamber on Synthesis Prime erupted in panic. Representatives from 50 species argued and shouted, but none had answers. The Coalition military had become ceremonial over the centuries of peace. Their ships were designed for patrol and rescue, not warfare. They had forgotten that the universe could birth horrors that existed only to consume. Then something unexpected happened. A signal appeared from a region of space that had been marked as forbidden for 300 years. The quarantine zone around the Sol system, where humanity had been contained after the Great Isolation. The message was brief and direct. Distress signal received. Terran response fleet deploying. ETA 8 hours. Hold the line. Council leader Theron felt his crystalline form vibrate with shock. The humans were responding. After 3 centuries of silence? The quarantine had been established after humanity's Third World War had nearly destroyed their entire species. They had used weapons that turned matter into energy, viruses that rewrote DNA, machines that could think and kill independently. The galaxy had watched in horror as Earth burned, then collectively decided to seal the system away when humanity somehow survived. Ambassador Merrick of the Hadari stood up in the council chamber, his 6 arms gesturing wildly. We cannot allow this. The humans are savages. They're from a death world where evolution is based on violence and competition. Their history is nothing but war and destruction. They'll be worse than the Devourers. But Council Leader Theron studied the tactical display showing Kepler-7. The Devourers were already through the outer defenses. In 8 hours, everyone on that colony would be dead. We have no choice. Our own fleet cannot reach them in time. If the humans can help, we must accept their offer. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Resilience. She was 60 years old, her black hair streaked with silver, her brown eyes carrying the weight of being the first human military commander to leave the Sol system in 3 centuries. Humanity had spent those centuries preparing, knowing that someday the galaxy would need them again even if it feared them. The quarantine hadn't been just a prison. It had been a cocoon. Humanity had taken the lessons from nearly destroying themselves and transformed them into something else. They had studied their own violence, understood it, controlled it, and refined it into a tool that could protect rather than destroy. Every human child learned martial arts alongside mathematics. Every citizen understood tactics alongside poetry. They had become a species of warriors who chose peace, predators who protected the weak. Lieutenant Commander James Park, her second in command, approached with a datapad. His cybernetic implants glowed softly blue, a reminder of humanity's integration of technology into their very bodies. "Admiral, the fleet is ready. 15 ships, all stealth-capable. Weapon systems optimal. The crew is eager, ma'am. 300 years is a long time to wait." Chen nodded slowly. The Terran response fleet was small compared to Coalition standards, but each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering. They had learned from every war, every mistake, every victory in their bloody history. These weren't just warships. They were the culmination of humanity's journey from savage to sentinel. "Send a message to all ships," Chen commanded. "Today we remind the galaxy that humans are not monsters. We are guardians. We fight not because we love violence, but because we love life. Those colonists don't know us, might even fear us, but they called for help. And humans always answer the call." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the quarantine zone for the first time in 3 centuries. The journey to Kepler 7 would take 8 hours. 8 hours for humanity to prove they had changed. 8 hours to show the galaxy that the Deathworlders could be heroes. Back on Kepler 7, Administrator Kellen gathered the colony's survivors in the central dome. Only 500 remained. The others had been caught outside when the Devourers breached the outer settlements. He could hear the creatures scratching at the shield barrier, their acidic saliva slowly eating through the energy field. "Help is coming," he told his people, though he didn't mention who was coming. He wasn't sure if knowing humans were on the way would give them hope or terror. "We just need to survive 8 more hours." Vara moved closer to him, her tentacles brushing against his arm in a gesture of support. "Administrator, the shields are failing faster than predicted. We have maybe 6 hours at most." Kellen looked at the frightened faces around him. Children of various species huddled against their parents. Scientists who had come here to study the stars now faced death from them. He had to make a decision that went against every instinct his peaceful species possessed. "Gather anything that can be used as a weapon. When the shields fall, we don't go quietly, we fight." The room fell silent. The Zilani had never fought in their entire evolutionary history. Neither had most of the species present. They were builders, thinkers, dreamers. But as Kellen looked at the children, he felt something primal awaken in him, something that perhaps all life carried, buried deep beneath civilization: the will to survive. The Devourer's queen watched from her bioship in orbit. She was ancient, older than some star systems, and she had consumed countless worlds. But she sensed something changing, a vibration in space that her species had learned to fear long ago. It was the resonance of a species that had evolved not despite violence but through it. The humans were coming. When predators become protectors, the Terran response fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system, like wolves emerging from shadow. Admiral Chen stood at the center of the Resilience's bridge, her stance relaxed but ready, the way a predator rests between hunts. The tactical displays showed the full scope of the situation. The Devourer swarm had completely surrounded Kepler 7, their bioships forming a writhing mass around the small planet. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Park. 3,000 Devourer organisms, ranging from fighter class to dreadnought equivalents. The colony's shields are at 12% and falling. Estimated time to total failure: 40 minutes. Chen studied the display with the same intensity her ancestors had once tracked prey across Earth's ancient savannas. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, creatures who would pursue their prey for hours until it collapsed from exhaustion. That same persistence had been refined over millennia into something more sophisticated but no less relentless. Commander Park, execute pattern Wolfpack. All ships engage stealth protocols. "We're going hunting." Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had studied every military engagement in human history, from the battles of ancient Rome to the orbital conflicts of the resource wars. The 15 human ships vanished from every sensor spectrum. The Coalition had always wondered how humanity had survived their Third World War, when weapons had become so devastating. The answer was simple. They had learned to become invisible. Stealth technology wasn't just equipment for humans. It was a philosophy. Strike from shadow, disappear before retaliation. Never fight fair when lives are at stake. On Kepler 7, Administrator Kellen watched his displays in confusion as the massive signatures of the human ship simply disappeared. One moment they were there, the next nothing. Even the Devourers seemed confused, their bioships writhing in space as they searched for the threat they could sense but not see. The first Devourer ship died in silence. One moment it was whole, the next it was venting fluids and biomatter into the vacuum of space. Then another died and another. The human ships were using weapons the galaxy had never seen, gravity-based munitions that crushed the Devourer vessels from within, turning their own mass against them. The Devourer Queen shrieked across bioelectromagnetic frequencies, commanding her swarm to converge and attack. But how could they attack what they couldn't see? The humans were using hit-and-run tactics perfected over thousands of years of warfare. They appeared just long enough to kill, then vanished before the Devourers could respond. On the Resilience, Weapons Officer Maria Rodriguez watched her screens with the focused intensity of a surgeon. Her family had been soldiers for 15 generations, each one passing down the lessons of survival and combat. Admiral, the Devourers are clustering together for defense. They're making themselves a single target. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a species that had learned to turn their enemy's strength against them. Deploy the Yellowstone Protocol. The Yellowstone Protocol was named after the supervolcano in North America that had once threatened to destroy human civilization. Humanity had learned to harness that destructive power, to contain it and release it with precision. A single human ship, the Prometheus, decloaked just long enough to launch a weapon that looked deceptively small. The warhead detonated in the center of the Devourer cluster. It wasn't an explosion in the traditional sense. Instead, it created a localized gravitational anomaly, a miniature black hole that existed for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, 500 Devourer ships were compressed into a space smaller than a pinhead, their mass converted into a burst of radiation that painted space in colors that had no names. The surviving Devourers scattered in terror. They had consumed countless worlds, faced hundreds of species, but they had never encountered anything like this. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought with the accumulated knowledge of a species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times and learned from each near extinction. But the Queen was ancient and cunning. She had survived eons by adapting to threats. She commanded her remaining forces to abandon the space battle and land on Kepler 7 itself. If she could take hostages, perhaps these humans would hesitate. She had learned that most species in the Coalition valued individual lives over victory. She had never fought humans before. Admiral, Chen watched the Devourers descending toward the colony and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear, but the recognition of necessity. She opened a channel to the colony. Administrator Kellen, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Response Fleet. The Devourers are attempting to land. I need you to evacuate everyone to the deepest bunker you have. What happens next won't be pleasant. Kellen's pale face appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes wide with a mixture of hope and terror. Admiral, we're grateful for your help, but there are children here. Families. Please be careful. Chen's expression softened for just a moment. Administrator, humans have a saying. The sheepdog must sometimes show its teeth to protect the flock. Get your people to safety. We'll handle the wolves. 5 human ships descended through Kepler 7's atmosphere like falling stars. But unlike the Devourers' chaotic descent, the human ships moved with purpose and coordination. They had studied the colony's layout, identified the population centers, and calculated exactly where the Devourers would try to land. Captain Marcus Thompson of the Wolverine was first to engage. His ship was smaller than the others, designed for atmospheric combat. His crew of 50 were all volunteers, each one understanding that protecting the innocent sometimes required becoming something terrifying. The Devourers that had landed near the colony's main dome were massive, each one standing 20 feet tall with claws that could tear through steel. They were preparing to breach the final barriers when the Wolverine arrived. Thompson didn't use the ship's main weapons. That would risk damaging the dome. Instead, he deployed something that made even his own crew uncomfortable: the Berserkers. Berserkers were humanity's answer to ground combat against superior physical opponents. They were human soldiers encased in powered armor that enhanced their strength 100-fold. Their reaction time to near instantaneous and, most disturbing of all, temporarily suppressed their pain response and fear. They were humans who had voluntarily become momentary monsters to fight actual monsters. 20 berserkers dropped from the Wolverine, landing among the Devourers like demons from human mythology. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration of controlled savagery. The Devourers were larger, stronger, and had natural weapons. But the humans had something more dangerous: the ability to channel their violence with precision and purpose. One berserker, call sign Reaper, grabbed a Devourer's claw as it swung toward him, using the creature's own momentum to flip it onto its back before driving an energy blade through its neural cluster. Another Phoenix moved through the enemy ranks like a dancer, each movement calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. They didn't fight with rage but with the cold efficiency of a species that had turned warfare into a science. Inside the colony dome, the survivors watched through the transparent barriers as the humans fought the Devourers. Vara, the Nathari scientist, recorded everything with shaking tentacles. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Those humans are a third the size of the Devourers. How are they winning?" Kellen understood, even if he wished he didn't. "They're not trying to overpower them. Look at how they move. Every action uses the Devourer's size against them. They're fighting smart, not hard." The Devourer Queen, watching her ground forces being systematically destroyed, made one last desperate attempt. She ordered all remaining ships to converge on the human flagship, the Resilience. 2,000 bioships against one human vessel. Surely overwhelming numbers would prevail. Admiral Chen watched the approaching swarm and spoke calmly to her crew. "All hands prepare for close combat. Deploy the murder web." The murder web was humanity's most controversial weapon, banned by their own laws except in cases of protecting innocent life. It was based on something deceptively simple: monofilament wire. Each strand a single molecule thick, invisible, and able to cut through almost anything. The Resilience deployed thousands of these strands in a complex pattern around itself. The Devourer swarm charged directly into the web. Ships were sliced into sections before they even knew what was happening. The Queen's own flagship, the largest bioship in the swarm, was cut into 17 pieces, each section drifting apart in the zero gravity of space. The Queen's final transmission was a single question broadcast on all frequencies: "What are you?" Admiral Chen responded on the same frequency, ensuring every Devourer survivor would hear. "We are humans. We are the species that evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We learned that the greatest strength is not in being the monster, but in choosing when to unleash the monster inside. You threatened the innocent. That was your mistake." The remaining Devourers fled the system, their bioships disappearing into the void between stars. They would spread the word through their collective consciousness. The Deathworlders were awake and they protected the weak. As the dust settled, Administrator Kellen stood in the colony's command center looking at the statistics. Of the 800 colonists, 743 had survived. It wasn't perfect, but it was far better than the 0 they had expected. He opened a channel to the human fleet. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired now, the adrenaline of combat fading. Behind her, Kellen could see her crew, humans of various ethnicities and backgrounds, all united in their purpose. "Administrator Kellen," Chen said formally, "the threat has been neutralized. We'll remain in system until coalition forces arrive to ensure no Devourers return." Kellen's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep emotion among his species. "Admiral, we owe you our lives. But I have to ask why. Your species has been isolated for 3 centuries. We locked you away. Why come to help us?" Chen was quiet for a moment, then spoke with simple honesty. "Because 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We learned that the greatest warriors aren't those who love fighting, but those who love peace enough to fight for it. You sent out an SOS. We heard children crying for help. There was never a choice. The Coalition Council on Synthesis Prime watched the recordings of the battle in stunned silence. The humans had saved the colony, yes, but the way they had done it terrified them. These weren't the savage humans of old who fought with rage and hatred. These were something far more dangerous. Controlled predators who could turn their violence on and off like a switch. Council Leader Theron finally spoke. We have a decision to make. Do we maintain the quarantine on humanity, or do we acknowledge what they've become? Ambassador Merrick of the Hadari stood up slowly. They saved 700 lives. They came when no one else could. They showed mercy to enemies who showed none. Perhaps it's time we admitted that we don't need protection from humanity. Perhaps the galaxy needs protectors and humanity has volunteered. The vote was unanimous. The quarantine on the Sol system was lifted. Humanity would be offered full membership in the Galactic Coalition, not as conquered subjects or reformed savages, but as guardians. The Deathworlders would become the shield between civilization and the darkness that lurked between the stars. On Earth, the news was received with mixed emotions. Some celebrated, others worried about what it meant to rejoin a galaxy that had feared them for so long. But in the military academies where the next generation of protectors trained, a new motto was adopted. We are the monsters that hunt monsters, the darkness that guards the light. Administrator Kellen returned to his duties on Kepler 7, but now with human advisors helping to design defense systems. As he watched the twin suns set once again over the Crystal Mountains, Vara joined him on the observation deck. Do you think we made the right choice inviting the humans back? She asked, her tentacles expressing uncertainty. Kellen gestured toward the playground where children of multiple species played together, including a handful of human children whose families had come as part of the cultural exchange program. A human girl was teaching a young Zelani how to stand up to a bully using words instead of violence, while a human boy carefully helped an Athari child who had fallen. Look at them, Kellen said softly. The humans teach their children to be warriors not so they can conquer, but so they can protect. They embrace their nature as predators, not to hunt the weak, but to hunt those who would harm the weak. Yes, they're dangerous, but they choose to be dangerous to our enemies rather than to us. That's not something to fear. That's something to be grateful for. Above them, human and coalition ships now patrolled together, a sight that would have been impossible just months before. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes you need monsters on your side, especially when worse monsters lurk in the dark. And humanity had proven that the most powerful warriors are those who fight, not because they must, but because they choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The SOS from Kepler 7 had indeed awakened the Deathworlders. But instead of the savage conquerors the galaxy had feared, they found something far more powerful. A species that had conquered its own darkness and now stood ready to face the darkness that threatened others. The age of isolation was over. The age of the Guardians had begun.